And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Smokin Tobacco Show live from the J.C. Newman Cigar Studios in Boston, Massachusetts. My name is Matt Tabacco from SmokinTabacco.com, and I'm joined once again by my beautiful fiance, Smokin Nicole, and we have a very special guest with us here tonight. We have the one and only Klaas Kelner, now of Kelner Tabak. Klaas, how are you?
Thank you for having me, Matt. Thank you for having me, Nicole. It's a pleasure. Very excited to be on, especially since last time we saw each other in Vegas. That real quick moment.
Yeah,
I'm very excited to get on this show since that moment.
Yeah, it was very quick. And I didn't even see you coming. I think we were being interviewed or something. You passed us by, and I was like, "Oh, hey!" And I didn't even know you were there. But I knew I had to connect with you in some way, and I figured why not just come on the show, and we can do it there. So we're really happy that you came on with us tonight. We're excited that you're here. John Carney is not with us tonight, as he was feeling under the weather, so he's gonna sit this one out. No big deal. So we are. Why don't we get into what we're smoking first, really quick? Let's do that. Sorry, hold on one second as I just pull this up. I forgot to open this tab here. So, Klaas, why don't you start off? Why don't you tell us what you're smoking? You're the guest, and then we'll go from there.
Well, today I decided to go with something that's very close and dear to my heart and my family's heart, and it's the Davidoff Yamasa. Here I have the box right there, and with the star. Here I also have a packet, but it's
that's a great cigar.
Very special to it's very, very special to us because of how much work we've put into the particular farm where Yamasa is, and the tobacco that comes out of there is very, very special. We'll probably get into that, but specifically because of the soil. And when you have a passion project that your family puts so much effort into it, it's impossible to not like it. But definitely was something that I wanted to smoke on your show because I wanted to talk a little bit about it. But it's also become my favorite, and it's the one I have the most boxes of lying around.
Yeah, I've had that cigar. It is a great cigar. The Davidoff portfolio as a whole is very robust and pretty good. I'm going to be smoking an Davidoff Anniversary number 3702 series right over here. That honestly, I don't even know where it came from. I found it in the humidor, and I was like, I don't remember buying this or like someone giving it to me. I'm like, I don't even know how this got here, but I was happy that I have it. I'll be honest. And our friends at twoguyscigars.com, if you want to get any Davidoff cigars, you should head over to Two Guys Cigars. That's the number 2 cigars.com. You can pick up this cigar for $27.99 for a single or $264.99 for a box. And Nicole, what are you smoking over there?
The Anniversario.
The Anniversario. That was my first cigar. I believe that's the number 3.
Yes. Yep.
That was my first Davidoff ever.
Was it?
It was my first one, and that is the cigar that I fell in love with Davidoff with. I remember I was actually at the Two Guys Smoke Shop rather, their brick and mortar store. When I had it, I'll never forget it. It was in the beginning of my cigar smoking days years ago, and I was like, I want to try something a little nicer, higher end quality. I had heard of Davidoff. I'd never had one. Didn't know anything about it. That was the cigar that brought me into Davidoff, and it's been one of my all-time favorite cigars ever since. That cigar also can be found at twoguyscigars.com for $27.79 for a single, as well as $423.99 for the box at the number 2 guyscigars.com. So, Klaas, there's a lot of things we can talk about. There's a lot of things we can get into. Obviously, you've started your own company now with Kelner Tabak. Your family, has worked with Davidoff for many years. I know you still do some work with Davidoff, even though you guys are not officially employees of the company anymore.
Yep.
Your father being also a master blender for Davidoff. Um, I don't even know where to start here. There's so much good stuff that we could get into. Why don't we
Well,
start
we
with
can
you?
start.
I was gonna say we could start with
Well,
you, and we can talk about what you're doing, and then we can go back.
yeah. Well, you hit it on the nail right now. I did start my own company almost a year ago now. It's called Kelner Tabak, um, and basically, I with this company, I service Davidoff as an external advisor, an external consultant. And for many years with Davidoff, what I was doing, I worked in the factory, I worked in the farms, but then a big chunk of it was also traveling for them as brand ambassador. And a lot of these events that I was doing in the market, at different retail, uh, traveling around the world, I got to see a little bit of the marketing end. And I think the fit that I am as an advisor right now is pretty cool because I get to bring in that knowledge from the market and then tie it in with the knowledge of working in the factory and also learning how to blend and looking at different tobaccos. And I helped Davidoff basically combine both the knowledge of the market and the knowledge of tobacco so that they can communicate properly to the consumer. And it's something that is pretty fun. Of course, my family still works with tobacco, so we still have the Yamasa farm and we still have the Hikome farm, which is my mother's farm, and we grow tobacco for Davidoff. And that's how we still tie it in. My father, as of 1 year ago, is no longer with Davidoff. He just grows tobacco for Davidoff. And it's been a pretty nice gig ever since. And now I'm back in DR, and it's not so bad. I don't have to travel as much.
So, just for clarification, I guess. So, is all of Davidoff's tobacco from your family, or is?
No, no, no. That would be a lot of tobacco.
Because I know a lot of people.
No,
I know a lot of people get this kind of. Well, maybe not everyone, but there's a large portion of people who, and this is why I kind of brought this up specifically. There's a large portion of people who kind of have this assumption that you guys are the only purveyors of the tobacco for Davidoff, but that's not the case.
no, no. Davidoff works with a contract base for farmers. So they contract out farmers around Dominican Republic. And Davidoff basically controls or oversees about 15 different zones or 15 different soils, terroirs that provide different flavors. And then they mix and match different varieties of tobaccos to these different zones. Uh, at some point, Davidoff has had over 70 farmers just in the Dominican Republic um, contracted for them, providing tobacco. But the two most important farms are my family's. Especially the Yamasa one and the Hikome one is the one that everybody knows. It's the one that you see on the pictures, the one that when people come and visit, that's the one that they visit.
Right.
That one has been around now since 1996.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's that one. That one is a little smaller than the Yamasa farm, but it's the famous one. It's the one that is everywhere. And you could also have to look at the point that Davidoff doesn't only just use Dominican tobaccos. Davidoff uses tobaccos from Nicaragua, from Mexico, from Ecuador. A lot of tobacco, especially in the wrapper, from Ecuador. So they are getting supplied from different suppliers and some very big players in the industry.
And there was a time, I don't know, maybe the younger audience might not know this, but there was a time when Davidoff also had Cuban cigars made under the Davidoff name, which was ended around, I want to say that was 1991. They ceased Cuban production. So
Yeah.
at one point in time, they even there was Davidoff Cuban cigars. Now, I know that your father obviously being a master blender, you mentioned you being on the farms and then the factories and all that, and growing up in that, in that family with that experience. So far for you, what has been the best part of the industry, growing up in it and being so involved and the things you've learned over the years about tobaccos, cigars, from seed to cigar, as they say. What is like the part that just really, that's like the romance for you?
Well, I was gonna say something else first, but then you said romance. Because the romance for me is definitely in the farm. I think that's my favorite part. Actually being able to see something grow from, I mean, some a seed that looks like dust, and it's so many seeds that you can just have in the palm of your hand, and this seed grows to 20 million times its original weight, a plant of 2 kilos, in a matter of 45, 60, a matter of 100 and 105 days. And it's impressive to see something that you nurture grow, and something that you take care of, and then you have wind and you have storms and you have no rain, and you go through so many troubles, and then at the end when you finally harvest it and then it dries and you have a finished product that you can actually give to Davidoff or give to a company to roll into a cigar. That's my favorite part. But the other side of the coin is the people, not only in the factory, in the farms, but also in the market, because this is a very tight knit community, and the cigar industry is just one big family. It doesn't matter if you're competitors out there in the market, uh, fighting for shelf space at a store. You're all friends at the end of the day. And I'm friends with a lot of manufacturers, with a lot of farmers, and it's just a very nice industry that makes you want to be part of. I don't I don't know anything else. This is the only thing I could do, and I'm actually very surprised when I see like kids of uh, tobacco families that don't go into the business,
Hmm.
because this is such a beautiful business, and it everybody that I meet just wants me to be part of it.
You know, it's interesting you say that because the especially the cigar part of the tobacco business, you know, the most, is a very family-oriented business. A lot of these brands are family-owned businesses that go back, you know, multi-generations. You know, as you know, you are a multi-generation in your
Mhm.
family in the tobacco business. And for the most part, I would say a majority of those brands have been handed down to the next generation. And we
Yep.
see it, you know, with people like the Fuente family, the Perdomo
Mhm.
family, you know, the Casada family. You know, those are generations that are coming down, and they're passing the torch. Um, and I think that's the part of the business I love too. I love how family oriented it is. I love how no matter how big some of these companies get, like that family core is still there, and that's kind of what holds it all together. And it makes the experience, I think, just the icing on the cake. Really, just you hear the story of the brand and the cigar specifically that you're smoking and where it came from and how it came to be. That whole family aspect is really important. Now I know that you said that you are, I believe you said you're a third generation.
Yeah.
You're a third
Third generation.
generation. So your grandfather obviously was in the business as well. Um, Now, being a third generation, and you mentioned, that there's other people you're surprised to see don't stay in the tobacco business. They go do other things.
There's not many. There's not many, but there are.
There
Yeah.
are, but you obviously continuing that tradition. In today's day and age, in the current state of the premium cigar industry, from your eyes, from your point of view, where do you see this industry going, and are you happy with the current state of the cigar industry?
Well, if you can look at it different ways, but if you look at it from the restrictions and the regulations, it's very alarming. And sometimes when you talk to the uh, older generations and they look to their kids, you will quite often hear somebody joke, and sometimes they're a little serious. Sometimes they just say it to say it, but they'll tell their kids or they'll tell the next generations like, why are you getting into this tobacco business? It's so hard. It's getting harder. It's getting harder. There's more regulations. It's harder to enter into the market. And uh, there's things that are easier. And from that perspective, I know the reason why we stay, and it's because we love it. Like I said, there's nothing else that we could not see ourselves doing. I'm talking for everybody that is third generation, fourth generation, and wants to be part of it, even though it gets harder. And maybe harder isn't bad. Harder makes you love it more. The harder the crop was, the more proud you are of it at the end. the more difficulties you had. So if you can power through all the difficulties, all these regulations, then you'll be happier at the end. You'll be more satisfied with your success. So hopefully, I wish success to everybody that wants to jump in this business, in this industry, because it's not getting easier. But what I do notice from the other side is that even though it's not getting easier in the side of regulations, in the side of the industry as a family, you will see sales, and you'll see sales that are more or less plateaued or slightly growing. And different countries and different territories vary. Some go down, some go up. And for example, Latin America is a predominant Cuban market, but you'll see that cigars from Dominican Republic and Nicaragua are growing. And you see that also with social media, the younger generation is jumping on the cigar train. And so it is quite uplifting, and it is encouraging to see a lot of younger generations jumping in sooner, because before cigars were for the older folk or the people that had money, and it doesn't seem like that anymore. I remember when I was growing up as a teenager, son of a master blender who owns a factory, all my friends from high school were like, "Ooh, you're around smoke, you're around tobacco," because in school, what do they teach you? It's bad for you. And they're brainwashed in that kind of sense. But then those same friends that during high school were like, "Oh, it's bad for you, it's bad for you," now they've become their own person. They don't have somebody in school telling them what's right or what's wrong. And you see them enjoying a cigar.
Yeah.
And you see the younger generation becoming their own person and deciding what's right for them and what's not good for them. And it's growing in our generation. In the 20s and the 30s, you see a lot of young people just enjoying a good cigar. So that's uplifting.
I just want to touch on one thing, because you bring up a good point. Now, me and you have talked about this earlier. And you brought up the fact that we don't bring it up enough on the show. So we'll bring it up. That was the feedback we got from Klaas Kelner. Not a lot of people realize. I mean, I think our most of our following, I think, just knows this, but maybe they don't. Maybe I don't know. So you were intrigued at the fact, like most people, that my last name actually is Tabacco. And it was funny, we were talking about that earlier. So again, as a reminder, yes, my last name really is Tabacco. It's slightly spelled differently. It's Tabacco, hence why it's spelled wrong.
I thought it was a mistake.
No, that wasn't for you.
That's why I asked.
That wasn't for you.
That's why I asked.
A lot of people are always like, wow. And I'm like, well, that's how my name is spelled. And they're like, well, it's spelled wrong. And I'm like, well, but that's what my name is. And then you see them put two and two together, like, wait a minute. Really? That's like actually your name? Yes, that's kind of the whole romance to what we're doing here. And then it's like, oh, the light bulb goes off. No, it's funny. You're talking about kids in school, like growing up, saying those things to you, your family being in the tobacco business. Growing up, everyone made fun of me for my last name. And now here I am, and I made a whole life around what my name is. Actually being, I heard do you smoke tobacco? Well, I do. And so who's laughing now? You know what I mean? I learned to just go with it. So I wanted to bring that up because we did talk about that earlier. But yeah, no, it's quite the journey that you guys have had. We did have a question from the audience. Rick G wanted to know, do they grow tobacco for anyone else besides Davidoff?
My family.
Yep.
No, we are actually exclusive. In regards to my father, my mother, me, we are exclusive to Davidoff. But when I say my family, there's also another tobacco grower in my family. It's Monica, my sister, and tobacco grower and broker, and she does excellent job, and her tobacco is actually quite good from Cotuí and also in Yamasa as well. And she grows for other people. One of those people being my brother, who owns the Kelner boutique factory. Ah,
nice. Yeah, I would say the Kelners have been pretty synonymous with Davidoff for quite some time now. Growing up, with your father, being a blender, what was that experience like? To work with your own father, and learn like his trade. And this is something that like I, for not a lot of people realize I'm kind of in the same boat. I have the same profession as my dad, and I, spent in an apprenticeship, learning that craft from him as well. So and I know that's a very special bond, no matter what the industry is, whether it's tobaccos or whatever it is. You learn something like that from anyone. It's a good skill to know. But when you learn from your own family, your father or like a grandfather, it makes it's a much different experience, and it can be very rewarding too. So tell me a little bit about like kind of growing up in that atmosphere and working with him one-on-one and learning things from him.
It's a very nice environment working with your father because he your father in this position has it very tough because the father wants the son or the daughter to learn, to really learn work ethic, but they also want them to grow, and sometimes grow rather quickly. And I think my father did almost the opposite. He threw me at the bottom, and he made me carry bales of tobacco. He made me spend months in the farm. He made me spend 3 months in the fermentation piles, sorting tobacco, cutting tobacco into little pieces with guillotines and things that were right down at the bottom. And I did this for about 1.5 years. And then he told me that if I really wanted to learn, I had to go and travel. So I became junior brand ambassador back then in 2015. And I traveled around the world doing events. I think that's the first time I really got a corporate feel because I was working in the United States for Davidoff USA.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I was working in the factory, and in the factory with my father, I didn't get the corporate feel, and I appreciate both because corporate can definitely sometimes be slow with the emails and in the factory, you solve everything with a phone call, or you walk over to the guy's office and you fix everything in 5 minutes. You have a problem, you make a call, you walk over, you fix it. In the corporate world, you got to schedule a meeting.
Right.
Everybody has to be available. You have to be more organized, the emails, the schedules. And I appreciate both sides of it. But with my dad, there was always that moment that I could literally just kind of forget about work, walk into his office and just sit down, smoke a cigar and have a coffee. Or I would go to work in the same car. I would carpool with my dad sometimes if it made sense. And I would walk straight into the office, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And the first thing, he would sit in the chair, light up a cigar, and I would have to go make him his coffee. I would have to go get him his lighter, get him his cutter, and set him up so that he could start his day. So the first 30 minutes of the day would be with my dad, and then the last 30 minutes of the day would be with my dad. And then we would talk about everything that happened during the day. It was fun. It was not easy at times, but it was fun. I remember that he sent me to where we received the filler tobacco from the farms. So right after the harvest is over, right after the curing process, Davidoff purchases all the tobacco. And I was there for about 2 to 3 months. And we were sorting tobacco. And when I went there, I went almost like an undercover boss. I didn't have my badge on me, I nothing. And even though some people knew me, those people that knew me, the supervisor, I asked them not to tell the workers who I was. And I was able to keep up the gig for about a month before somebody realized who I was. And the moment they realized who I was, that I was the son of the boss, their demeanor around me and the way they treated me completely changed. And they started treating me nice, and they didn't want me to carry heavy things or get dirty. And the experience completely wasn't the same. So it's not easy balancing that position as the son of the boss, because you really want to learn and you really want to get the most out of it without getting special treatment.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the other thing is the special treatment. I know for me, in my job, a lot of the times, like everyone knows who my dad is. He's a pretty well-known guy, in our field. We work for the same company. And so it's always like people see me. it's hey, how you doing, and then it's how's your dad. So it's always like my dad's always like the topic of conversation.
Yep.
You know,
Like right
and I've often been like, you know, people try to like compare you to and see like, well, you know, and then there's obviously the other people around you who they don't know who you are and they don't care. But then once they do, you're right. It's like a switch. It just changes. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey. And they're all nice. They don't want you to say anything bad about them to the boss, or they don't, you know, you're right. And then, and in some aspects, it's kind of like you're trying to be your own person and you're trying to grow
Yep.
within your own, way. And that is more of a challenge, because you have to you have to learn to grow past the stigma. I don't know if the right way to say that, of like just being like the son of somebody, whether it's the boss or just anybody, and being looked upon differently just because of that, regardless of maybe how knowledgeable you are, how good at your job you are. Like people may look at you funny, like, oh, they get special treatment, or oh, he only got that because of this. You have to learn to just ignore that. It's something that I know I dealt with in the beginning. It was like I got in my own head, and I'm sure at some points you were there too. But you learn to move past that and just grow on after that.
Yeah, it's been very interesting, right? And I decided to do college as soon as possible, as fast as possible. I finished half a semester early. I was trying to do summer classes, trying to take on extra credits, so I could finish as soon as possible, so I could get to work. So I graduated December 2013. So I guess it's been over 8 years since almost 9 now since I've been in the industry working officially, and I think now I'm starting to get to the point where I don't have so much the shadow, and it's still there. I'm still referred to as Hanky's son from time to time, but sometimes I've been called they've called my dad Klaas's dad now, and when that happens the first time, my dad is like, "What? When did that happen?" And then I get to do shows on my own. But you still got to keep that respect and that hierarchy. He's still number one. He's still my boss. He's still my dad, but my boss. And I remember that I was asked to be on an interview for Latino Aficionado, and they called me. They wanted me to be in the interview in their first magazine, and I said yes, I'll be in your magazine. But the first thing is first. My dad goes first. I was like, wait, no, we're asking you to be in the magazine. I was like, no, my dad goes first, or I can be on it with him, but my dad goes first. It's always keeping that respect, because I'm not anything if it weren't for him.
That's a very interesting, and I like that a lot. I like that approach that you took. It's not something I don't think I've seen a lot of other people do, where you're like, you know what, like, I'd be honored, but I want you to have him first, and then I'll come in, or we can do it together. But like, you never want to just be like, oh, hey, I got the call, you didn't, hey, and it's like, well, you're only getting the call because of me. In a nice way, it's like you said, it's true. I mean, there's opportunities you have because of your dad. That's a wow, that's a really it's a respectful touch. That's interesting. I like that. Before we continue, I forgot we do have to hit our news.
Yes.
So let's hit our news really quick. Our news is brought to you this week, once again, by our good friends at McAuliffe Cigars. McAuliffe Cigars, become an ambassador today. If you head over to McAuliffeCigars.com, you can sign up to be an official ambassador, get your ambassador number, your ambassador coin, and while you're there, you can sign up for the McAuliffe Tasting Passport Program, with opportunities to win amazing prizes from McAuliffe Cigars. What do we have this week?
So I would say the most talked about news this week, thank you, I always forget about that, is that out of Miami, over 75,000 cigars were stolen from the CLE warehouse on Saturday night, overnight. That is a lot of cigars to walk away with and steal in one outing.
Now, if I remember correctly, too, also included in that was some of the cigars from Petoro.
Yes.
Which CLE also warehouses for that. Well, not all of their stuff. I believe it's some of their stuff, but some of that was involved in the theft as well.
Most of them were from the Asylum brand, is what was reported.
Yeah, the Asylum 8, the Asylum 13, the Insidious, CLE, Connecticut, Corojo, Habano, Iroa, CBT, Lobotomy, Medulla.
Yep.
A lot of those, good brands. Yeah, it's a shame. Yeah, that's a. And when I first read that, I was like, that's a lot of cigars, even if you had a small team. That's a lot of cigars for someone to steal so discreetly overnight. I mean, I don't even know.
It
How many? How many was it?
75,000.
75,000. So
Actual.
that's about three rollers, so a pair and a half. Three people's work for the entire year.
Wow.
To put that
So-
into perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So the average, so you break that down, simple math, the average roller would roll about 25,000 cigars a year.
Well, in Dominican Republic, that's about it. It's about a pair, 50,000.
Wow. That's yeah, that's a lot. And it's a shame for
Christian Aroa and
for
his team.
for Aroa
Everyone at
and
CLE.
everyone at CLE and Tom Lazuka, and I was talking to those guys today. That Tom and Christian are going to be separately coming on the show coming up. But yeah, I mean it's horrible. And not only that, but you just think about like there's so many. I have so many questions. It's like you steal that many cigars, right? Like, what are you planning on doing with them? That's a lot of cigars to have to move. You know what I mean? And no one's keeping all of that for their personal supply. And it's just,
Yeah.
where are you keeping them?
And also people are
I mean, that's a lot of cigars.
one, it's a lot of cigars, but if someone is going to sell them, obviously these are going to be missing from a lot of retailer shelves. So if they're putting them
Yeah.
online or, it'll be, I mean, I guess once it goes through many different hands, I guess it'll be hard to trace, but
The worst part is, not only is, it's oh my God, it's revenue, it's lost revenue, it's lost inventory. There's already a shortage on inventory. Everyone's backed up. Everyone's trying to fight to keep up with demand. There's an incredible demand right now, especially with everything that happened last year that really backed everything up. And then to have a large chunk of your stock stolen like that, it really sets you back. And like you said, that there's retail shelves that, there's retailers who sell to those who are itching to refill their inventory, and they get it at the warehouse, they get it in from Honduras, and now it's like, hey, we were gonna ship you that order you're waiting for like 3 months, and it got stolen. I don't know. We're working to try and get that replaced and get it out to you. As a retailer too, that kind of it like everything. It's a downhill effect. It affects everyone, and it's just so unfortunate. It really sucks. It really does just to see that. Because it hurts a lot of really good people in the industry. Who rely on that inventory. It's really horrible. I believe last year too. I think Justo Aroa had some inventory stolen last year, if I remember correctly too. So I mean, this is the second time that family's been hit within a short window. It's really tough and it's very unfortunate. But we wish them the best, and we hope that they can move on from that as the best way they can. So that was our news segment for the week. Going back to Klaas here.
I say that every time something bad happens to a cigar, somebody cries in the Dominican Republic or one of the rollers. So I mean, I try to put into that perspective because of that. Like 3 rollers work for the full year just gone to waste in that sense, and it's sad from the people that make it. It's also sad for everybody else. But imagine putting all your blood, sweat, and tears and just so much effort into making something and it just got stolen. It's a handmade, crafted product,
Absolutely.
It's not easy.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, it speaks to cigars, and and that's the thing. People put so much effort and time. Not even just the rollers. Like the people on the farms, people in the factories. The rollers themselves. So much work goes into just making that cigar, and it's like, it's a work of art. You know what it is? It's a handmade product. To have it stolen or to have it otherwise, like I cringe, like when I see shops post like, oh, like our store got robbed, or like we had a fire, and the store burned down, or like there was a flood and our inventory got ruined, and it's like some people will be like, whatever, like it's just like they'll get new stuff or whatever, but it's like you think about it, like it's not like an electronics store where it was made in
Yeah,
some
you can't just
factory.
print this thing out. It's not a
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah, like you know how much time went into making those cigars. I mean, maybe it's like maybe like people like us, we just love the science and the romance of the industry too much. But it's like, yeah, you see that, and it is heartbreaking. It is, to see that. I don't even look at it so much as a waste, but it's just disappointing, that someone didn't get to enjoy those cigars that someone spent so much time on. There's some cigars, and I'm sure you've been there too. Maybe you've just learned to get past it. But like, there's some cigars you get, and you're like, wow, this is so amazing. You have so much appreciation for it. You're like, I didn't even want to smoke it because it's like I know I'm gonna smoke it and it's gonna be gone. It's probably gonna taste great, but it's like it'll be gone just like that, and it just you admire it so much. That's the crazy thing too about cigars. You get into like crazy stuff, and you have so much
I'm
appreciation
not
for
a
it.
cigar hoarder.
No, see, and I'm not either.
I
I
am
would
not a
rather
cigar hoarder.
smoke it and enjoy it, and even
Yeah,
if it's the only one, I want to smoke it and enjoy it. He will put it on a shelf and stare at it.
that's my tribute.
So,
Smoke it in flames, ashes. That's my
yeah.
tribute. The smoke is my tribute to the person that made it. There's very, very few cigars that I'll hoard for a while, and that's because I got enough of them. But I go through cigars pretty quickly.
I mean, that's what they're there for. I mean, at the end of the day, they were made to be smoked. They were made to be enjoyed. As long as you enjoy it when you smoke it, that's all that matters. I believe we had another question here,
Yep.
from David Wayne. Amanda, can you ask Klaas, which farm does Cabal come out of? Cigars?
Mm.
Yeah.
I can't speak on behalf of Cabal. That's my brother's cigar. So that's made in the Kelner Boutique factory, and I'm not 100% acquainted with the blend, so I cannot speak on behalf of that. Um, you know, talking a little bit about family, but also master blending or blending, if you will. My father always jokes that he's not a master; he's just a blender. So we're all just blenders, and some of us a little better, some of us has a little more time at it than others. But um, the philosophy of my family, whether it's my father or what he has taught to his kids, it's about total palate stimulation. So the tobaccos come from different areas. The varieties are different varieties, different types, and they get uh, sown in different soils that provide different flavors as well. And the idea is to make a cigar that is well balanced, a cigar that stimulates all areas of the palate. And that's the philosophy of my family, total palate stimulation. And all the cigars that have been blended under my father's wing and Davidoff and whatever my brother is making, we always try to make it, of course, a pleasant experience, but it's not one-sided. It's all complemented in your palate, and you can have it just by itself, and it's a great experience just by itself.
You
You
know,
don't need other boosters.
yeah.
You don't need other influence.
I mean, they're nice. They go well together. But yeah, you're right. Interesting. Davidoff being kind of the prestigious brand that it is. Obviously they offer cigars of a high quality. Now, when you guys are in that factory, you're in that process. You're manufacturing cigars. Making sure that those cigars, are up to what they expect for their quality, for what they're going to offer that to be, the price point that they carry, the reputation of the Davidoff name on them. What is that quality control like in the cigar factory? I don't know if that's something that a lot of people talk about.
Uh, I'm sorry, I lost you for a second. Could you repeat that?
Oh yeah,
Um,
sorry.
we're talking about making it up because it carries a price, so it has to have a standard. Could you repeat that question?
Yeah, sorry. The question was, just tell me a little bit about, being in the factory, going through the quality control process, in manufacturing cigars. We talked a little bit about the rollers earlier and people who put that work into making those cigars. You have to go through those cigars after and make sure that they live up to that quality. But sometimes maybe they don't, and you have to take those out and you have to either destroy them or whatever you guys do with them. I'm sure that plays such a key role in you make the cigar and then you have to make sure it's good enough. To speak to, if you could speak to a little bit to that, that'd be really awesome.
So, of course, one side is blending, right? And anybody with tobacco, inventory, different varieties or different suppliers can make a blend. That's easy. And anybody can make good blends and bad blends. That's not an issue. But once you hit once you hit a good blend, the hard part is being able to make it consistently over and over again.
Right.
Because everybody can make good blends, but then the next year the tobacco runs out, or the weather was different, different processes were different by the supplier, so the tobacco tastes different. So it's being able to consistently make the same flavor profile, and of course also the same quality in regards to construction and burn lines and all that. So quality control is the other key aspect. You need good tobacco, you need the romance, you need the blending, but you could say the Swiss side of Davidoff is being able to engineer it always to perfection, and always being able to make it over and over again the same flavor, even if the tobacco is changing, even if the raw material is changing. So there's a blending department that actually weighs every single bag, if you will, or every single leaf in different amounts, so that the roller always gets exactly the same amount of weight and the same amount of tobacco. But those blends that are being made in the blending department, every single time they're being made, they have to be checked. So there's people enjoying or smoking, trying the batch that is being made. And that's why also we like when the cigar rollers are able to enjoy the cigar that they're making, so that they know what they're making and they know how it's supposed to taste. So if one day, by mistake, because we're all human, they receive one tobacco that's a little off, they can detect that it's a little off and it's not going to taste the same. So that batch has to be re-verified, and they have to find which tobacco was the one that was off. But quality control in regards to construction, there's a lot of quality control points. So after the cigar is made, at Davidoff, they check the cigar 7 times, even before it goes to the packaging department or the resting department, where you're going to age the tobacco for a couple months. So you will see that at the end of these 7 times, the cigar gets checked by weight, by structure, by diameter, by length, and all these things. And then there's a box at the end that of all the broken cigars. And there's a lot, and that's a moment that I always show to the visitors, because that's like their aha moment. Is like, oh my God, they actually break the cigars if they're not up to standard. And then I make them sit down or touch the cigars that are being rejected, so that they see why they are being rejected. And it's minimal. It's like little things that you're like, well, but this is still a great cigar. It's still perfect. I would smoke this. But they're in awe that just little minute faults, it's a rejection. And even with all those rejections, Davidoff is making quite a bit of cigars. It's less than 1% rejection. So the cigar rollers are very, very good. And after a cigar is made, anybody in packaging and distribution has the power to reject a cigar, or take it out of the line. So that's a mentality. It's a culture of quality. And it's a mentality that you have to fix into the employees' brain, so that they realize that the cigar has to be perfect when the moment it comes out, because they have to be loyal to the consumer, and by providing the best product. And if they're loyal to the consumer by providing the most loyal product, then the consumer hopefully will be loyal back and keep purchasing and enjoying their cigars.
So one of the things you mentioned there, talking about the rollers smoking the cigars from the batch. I think a lot of people kind of assume like, oh well, you're a roller in the factory, you're rolling cigars all day. They get to smoke it, and that's like a perk or an enjoyment. It's also part of their job. They should smoke what they're rolling, so that way they can, like you said, they can detect, hey, you know what? This cigar tastes funny. The tobacco's off. It's a little under fermented, or there's something not right here. And do we want to keep rolling these? Like, no, we need to take that. We need to take that tobacco out of rotation. That tobacco, is not ready to be rolled.
Yep.
And I think that's
there's some rollers. Yeah, there's some rollers that don't smoke the cigar, or they don't smoke every single cigar, but every single cigar that is being made is being enjoyed by somebody on the rolling floor or one of the supervisors every single day. And back when my dad was owner and then president of Tabadom, Tabacos Dominicanos, the factory that makes Davidoff, his door always stayed open. And one of the reasons why his door always stayed open is because anybody could go in. And if there's any problems, somebody can go in and address it. And you would not believe, it wouldn't happen that often. It would happen maybe 2 or 3 times a year, where I was sitting in my dad's office and a roller would walk in. It's like, try this. Ingeniero, they call him ingeniero, engineer, because he was an engineer by education. Ingeniero, try this. Is it off? And my dad was like, it's a little off. You're right. Let's check it. And he would stand up, and then he would send somebody to go check the blend and see what was off with it. It's you have to be there. It has to be hands-on at all times. You cannot just write down a formula and give tobacco and cigars are going to be made. The cigars have to be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and it doesn't really matter what brand it is. It doesn't matter, if it's a $6 cigar, if it's a $40 cigar. Any factory that makes cigars, they have a level of expectation to whatever they make. And like you said, there's a target blend. When you guys blend a cigar, and then okay, now it's time to produce it on a larger scale. Being consistent with that, and not only being consistent with the blend, the way it tastes, and the full palate stimulation, like you mentioned before, but it's also the quality, the construction, the roll. Is it not too tight. There's no cracks in it. The wrapper, the wrapper quality itself is on par with where it should be, and there's so many different variables, I'm sure, that happen too, between when the tobacco's loose and it's being rolled, after they're rolled, and all these things that that go into it. It's I hear a lot of people compare it to like the wine industry. It's like you said, like
it's more complex.
Yeah, and it's kind of a similar arena where you could have different, your crops are different from year to year. Now you're making a cigar, whether you're making the 702 series, which someone smokes a lot of. They expect it to taste a certain way, and then they buy a box one year and they're like, this doesn't taste the way that it has the last 3 years. Something's different. Someone could pick up on that. It's the same thing with a wine. Like, Nicole's dad's a big wine drinker, and I know that this is like things that he's talked to me about too, like, because he doesn't smoke cigars. And he's like, there's a lot of wines I drink, I drink over and over and over again, and sometimes they taste better than other bottles that I've had of the same wine, and because you really can't get it, 100% perfect. These things are all, like you said, they're organic, they're grown, handmade. You can be the best you can, but you'll never get it, I guess, 110% exact the same every time.
Well, that's what you strive for. And when you strive for that 110, 120%, then
you get close.
You strive for more.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're absolutely right in the side of the variables, and that it's handmade product. That's the hardest thing. But when I like to compare it more to the champagne industry, not so much to the wine industry. So of course, there's champagne that have years, and every year is supposed to taste different, but most champagnes, or the Moët, for example, the traditional one, it's up to the cuvee, the 3 different grapes, the blend, and every single year that champagne has to taste exactly the same. And we strive for it, and when you have that quality control and we have that many steps involved, then, and you have, most importantly, the culture of quality, that everybody believes in it, then you don't need the supervisor to be there 24/7, even though he's there, because everybody else believes it. It's not just the owner that believes it, it's everybody that believes into it and wants it to be perfect.
Absolutely. Rick G asks, does Klaas smoke cigars from any other manufacturers? This is a question that always gets asked, either by us or someone in the audience. Every time we have someone on,
everyone wants to know.
Everyone wants to know. It's like, obviously, people smoke a lot of stuff.
I was looking at some of your interviews, and every time it gets asked, I was already prepared. But I'll tell you what I actually always say. I won't mention specific cigars, but maybe, you're mentioning brands as a whole, but I do respect certain blenders, and I respect certain families, and you're friends with them, obviously. And I do tend to be more skewed to some families and their taste profiles or the tobaccos that they have, because every every family, not only do they have their own blender, their own taste profile, or their own uh, consumer that they want to hit, but they also have tobacco or new regions or different farms that taste completely different, or their own varieties of seeds. So there's certain brands out there that I don't particularly like, just because the brand always tastes in that profile because of the processes that they did in fermentation or in aging, or the the particular tobaccos that they have available, and it's what their brand represents. But I do, um, I mean, if I'll say some, like for example, I believe I can say this without getting into trouble. I do respect a lot the Plasencia family. The
Mm.
Plasencia family, we
Mm.
actually buy a lot of tobacco from Nicaragua from them. Davidoff Nicaragua, it has tobacco from their family. And I respect these families that are also started with tobacco and then they moved into cigars as well, because it's almost like you start at the base and then you went to cigars. Some people start with cigars and then they went to tobacco, and it's also right. But I like when somebody starts with tobacco and then they move up into cigars, because they respect the leaf, they respect the soil, and I respect a lot of different blenders. There's just some that I enjoy more than others. It is my job when I was traveling to check out the competition, uh, and I don't call them the competition; they're my friends, but they they are the ones that definitely are out there in the store making events, occupying shelf space, and you have to see what's out there, because if you only blend for yourself and you only blend with the tobaccos that you have available to yourself, then you will never branch out. And Davidoff in 2013 started branching out with Davidoff Nicaragua, Davidoff Escurio with Brazilian tobacco, Yamasa that has a brand new farm with also with Nicaraguan tobaccos. So I think that because we are able to taste what the market likes, what different consumers likes, what we're tasting, what our friends or competition have available, is that we are able to grow and become better and offer a wider selection to the people that enjoy Davidoff with the quality of Davidoff.
It's a good.
But I did mention one name.
Yeah, you did. That I'll take that. You gave us one name. That's good. So being a blender, you actually raised two questions I actually have. So, or maybe not questions, but just kind of follow-ups to what you said. Being a blender, making cigars, with the tobaccos that you have, making cigars, for Davidoff and all that. And this question does get asked to brand owners and other blenders and stuff like that. I've asked this question to Cynthia Fuente, Nick Perdomo, hey, well, who else's stuff do you smoke? And they play it close to the vest, and I get it. They have a brand that they need to represent, but at the same time, it's like you really have to smoke a lot of other brands to understand, like, all right, well, maybe you have a product you're putting on the shelf that is competing for shelf space with someone else. You need to know, what flavor profile those other cigars have. What is that company shooting for? The quality that they have, and you have to kind of stack yourself against them to kind of know like where you stand. And I imagine that plays a huge role in what you do too. It's not only just manufacturing your own cigars and growing your own tobacco, but you need to stay up to date with everyone else's tobaccos as well, so that way you understand kind of like what you're going up against. So is that also just such a major part of your day-to-day business, in a cigar factory?
I'm looking behind my computer right now. Right now, behind my computer, there are 3 cigars from other brands.
Hmm.
How much? I am constantly smoking other people's stuff. And what's nice is that when you are in a position like mine, and for example, you go to IPCPR, PCA, or you go to different events, or you travel, people want to give you a cigar to try, and we're always swapping and changing, and and it's fun because there's a certain amount of pride in giving a cigar that you blended to your competitor or your friend, and then just swapping and then actually giving honest feedback to each other. Because I would say that probably 6, 7 out of 10 times that I enjoy somebody else's cigar, I write to them. It's like, hey, I tried this, good job, or I didn't really like this, and I got to be honest with them, because they gave me the cigar so that I could try it, so to give them their honest feedback. And it's a friendship. It's learning as well for me, because I get to try new stuff. And I haven't tried every tobacco out there, not cigar. I haven't tried every type of tobacco out there. I haven't tried the specialty farms from certain brands that I would wish to try. So it's always a lot of fun for me to try other people's stuff, and then they get to try our stuff, and it's a fun game. It's not a competition; it's a game.
And being a blender, you talk about trying cigars and writing to people, who other people's tobacco and cigars that you've tried, and giving them feedback. Would you say that when you have to give someone a negative feedback, whether it's a lot of negative feedback or there's any kind of negativity, and as you said, you present it in a respectful way, like, hey,
Of course.
do you think people respect that more coming from you, being like, someone who really knows the business, and they really take that to heart, like, oh wow, like, I didn't pick up on that, or yeah, maybe we should change that, because I feel like when you're blending your own cigars, maybe to you get to a blend that it makes a lot of sense, it tastes really good, maybe you just have this certain arena of flavors and profiles you want to stay in, and then when someone from way outside who also grows tobacco detects something that maybe you don't, maybe your palate gets so adjusted to what you're smoking that the other people can pick up on each other's tobaccos in different ways, and that really influences each other.
I think what helps is that as a blender, you learn to be objective, because I never say that I don't like a cigar. I try to describe the cigar as best as I can. And then I will say, well, this is not particularly my flavor profile, but I see how it would be liked by somebody that likes this kind of flavor profile or this kind of market. I try to be as objective as possible, and you always have to be objective with yourself as well, because if you're not objective with yourself and you just always think that you're good, and everything, you're just a lot of bad things that you can do. And there's been many blends where you try so many times and you're like, you know what? I think we hit something. I think we have something here. And then you hand it out to a couple people to see people's opinions, and then 3 out of the 5 people will come back with like, I didn't like it. And I don't mind that response, because if they didn't like it, it's because for their profile they didn't like it. But that doesn't mean that the other 2 people liked it, and the other 2 people are maybe the demographic that we want to hit. So you have to look at it from that objective side, that what market are you trying to hit, what flavor profile you're trying to hit, because different markets, different regions like different things. And it's necessary, because if Davidoff only tasted one way, then our market would be this small. By providing a lot of different flavor profiles, we're able to reach out to a lot more people. I don't care if you smoke that cigar today, that 702, and you say, I hate it. I don't care, because I know other people like it.
It's honestly, it's great. I haven't had one. I don't think I've had this one, and it's delightful. It really is. It's really good. It's interesting. Let me peel back the curtain. I'm gonna steal that from Coop. I know. I'm stealing one of his terms. I know. But he likes to kind of like get into like people's personal opinions and feelings and stuff. So let's play this little game here. So you talk about obviously being a blender, and you blend stuff for a certain way, for Davidoff and for cigars and whatever that you guys are trying to sell. Now, on a personal level, in your own in your own enjoyment and stuff you like, is there a particular flavor profile that you really like? You really don't like, that's very popular? Like, for example, let me give you an example. So like, there's people out there who like cigars that are very pepper forward or strong in pepper and spice. It's just like that's all you taste in the cigar. Is there any profiles in particular that you're like you can respect the art of the blend, but you just don't like it at all?
Um, there are certain tobaccos that we use in blends that when I find them being used a lot in the cigar, like a high percentage, they I personally feel like, for at least for my palate, they overpower and they unbalance the cigar. One example, my friends from Mexico know this. Some of them are listening. Negro San Andres is a tobacco that I really like as a binder. I do like it also as a wrapper or as one leaf inside the the blend in the filler. But when you start getting into 30% of the whole blend um, is Negro San Andres, for me it's too much personally, because for me I start feeling like a residue in the top of behind my teeth, in the top of the palate, that I sometimes describe it like almost a little metallic. There's some tobaccos that give a little bit of a metallic taste, and it's normally right above on the top of your palate behind your teeth, and you rub your tongue up there, and that's a taste that I don't like. There's certain tobaccos that give that, and when you use that tobacco in a lot of proportion, I think it overpowers the blend. I don't think it's bad, because in small proportions it's not metallic. It's almost like a nice little salty, that minerally taste that almost boosts the blend. And in small proportions, like a little bit of salt in your food improves it. But when you add too much of it, not so great. Like Olor Dominicano. Olor Dominicano, for me, when you hit over like 50%, there's no way I'm going to enjoy that cigar. That's why blends are there. And that's why I enjoy blends that have multiple tobaccos. And in the past, blends used to be 4 tobaccos, and then they started getting to 5. And nowadays, you're seeing blends with 6 and 7 tobaccos. So you're able to get a lot more complexity and not have any of the tobaccos really overpower one of the other.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up that last part. I remember watching an interview you did with the guys over at Boveda, and you were talking about that too. How it's almost like an evolution of cigars. Really, cigars started out with less tobaccos, and now it's as they continue to evolve, there's more and more tobaccos being included in a particular blend, which dramatically, like you said, it changes the overall complexity of the entire experience. There's a segment we have on the show that I wanted to bring up with you, and I think I know what one of your answers is going to be, but it's our top 3 segment. It's a newer segment to the show. For you, I wanted to ask you your top 3 favorite blends that you've worked on of all time. If you had to pick 3 that you loved, that you were ecstatic about, what would those 3 blends be?
Do they have to be in the market?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. You know what? I'll allow it. No, I'll allow it. But you have to tell us, if it's not in the market, you got to tell us a little bit more about it.
Okay, because the thing is that when you ask that kind of question, I immediately start my mind starts immediately going into limited editions of the past. So, and it's not necessarily that, not that I worked on it. I was maybe part of a project, or I was part of a marketing, or I got to taste the blends 2 years in advance and get my opinion on it, because it is a team effort. That there's not just one person in Davidoff doing everything.
Right.
But I wasn't working, and I have to say, even if it's impossible to get it nowadays, I do have to say, I wasn't even working. I was still in high school. The first time I tried it was a 2006 limited edition for the 100th anniversary of Zeno Davidoff, the Diadema. Diadema and Diadema Fina in both shapes. That's will forever be my favorite cigar I have ever enjoyed. And I had run out last year, but I found 2 more hidden somewhere in my family's house. So now I stole them. So I still have 2 more. And I normally enjoy them on my birthday. But that's one of them. We don't have it so much in the market. 702 is going to slowly be discontinued for now, or you won't see it as much. But the 702 limited edition from 2009 was the first time that we worked with the 702 hybrid. So That wrapper is very special, what you have right there. But the 2009 version of it, which was a limited edition, was amazing. And I love what the 702 does to the cigars, because um, it is an Habano type wrapper that, when put in these traditional Davidoff blends, you have the 702 Aniversario there,
Yes.
Annie number three,
Yep.
Annie number three. So the Annie number three is already, for Davidoff terms, a medium bodied cigar. Um, Even though for maybe the industry it's on the lower end of the spectrum, but for Davidoff, it's about a medium bodied cigar. And when you add that wrapper on it, it becomes a lot more creamier and a lot more sweet. And the intensity goes up by a couple points, 1 or 2 points, depending on who you are. But the Anniversario number three is already a powerful blend, so the wrapper doesn't change too much. But when you put that 702 wrapper on the very light cigars like Davidoff, um, like a Grand Cru that was only available in Europe, or the 2000 Davidoff 2702, or Davidoff number two, which is the lightest cigar that Davidoff makes. This very powerful wrapper on a very, very light cigar changes the cigar completely and gives it a nice creamy sweet tones, almost like a caramel. And I love the 702 wrapper. And it was a passion project as well, that creating a new wrapper. And then, if I have to mention something that is regular line production, I've said already on the show that this has become one of my favorites, the Yamasa. But between the Yamasa and the Puro de Oro, that it has been discontinued. The Puro de Oro and the Yamasa, again, another passion project. The Yamasa wrapper and the Yamasa soil adds more sweetness and a little bit of spice that is quite pleasant, and adds a nice little salty boost to the cigar. And maybe you've noticed a trend, but I tend to go for creamy, sweeter cigars. They're still balanced in the back and have a little spice. I don't like overpowering pepper. I don't like overpowering notes of like wood or chocolate in the back. I like it to be almost like not a dark chocolate, but like maybe 70-75% chocolate.
Yeah.
And with a little bit of creaminess. I like the sweet tones, because the sweet tones definitely balance out the front. You find a lot of cigars out in the market that are overpowering in the back, and people think it's very flavorful because it's very powerful. But a cigar is not flavorful because it's strong. A cigar is flavorful because it can be complex. So that's what I like about the sweetness, because sweetness balances the stereotype of strong cigars in the back. Now that you guys switched, you guys,
Oh,
We
you
suddenly
noticed,
did that
yeah.
while you were talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
No, definitely that wrapper makes a huge difference on that blend. I definitely taste it
that's
being creamier.
exactly the same blend.
Yeah.
Exactly the same blend.
Yeah.
The only difference is the wrapper. You're talking about basically 5% of the total weight of the cigar. That's the only difference.
And it's interesting because, it still has the soft creaminess to it, but that wrapper just adds a little bit more edge to it that just gives it
Mm-hmm.
a different flavor, a different profile. It is
I almost
noticed.
taste a little bit more salt with
Yeah.
with that wrapper.
Yeah.
But it's good. It does kick
There's
it
a
up a
little bit
couple
more
notches.
stimulation in the front of the palate. There's a little more sweetness, a little bit more salty. The Aniversario line has a high percentage of piloto, which is hence hits in the back. That's like over 40% of piloto. So when you add that sweetness, it balances out the thing in the back. And it's already a very balanced cigar still, but this adds another dimension in the front, which is quite nice.
So you said that the 702 series is going to be discontinued.
It's Davidoff is going through a moment where it is basically they just launched the Davidoff Dominicana,
Right.
and the Davidoff Dominicana is only a 2-year production, so it's like a regular production, but like limited regular production.
Mm-hmm.
So Davidoff is going to start coming through these cycles of products so that they don't get old in the market, so that every time you're able to revitalize the brand. Because one of the issues that's happening is that the market is moving into what's new. What's new? There's so many limited editions, and everybody asks for what's new. So one of the jobs, or one of the things that Davidoff really wants to do, is bring back love to the previous line. So that's why you've seen a lot of older cigars being brought back that are able to bring love to the white label, because the white label has been around since the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
That Davidoff Aniversario number 3 was made in 1993. That was the first time that was launched to the market. And when people always have what's new, what's new, what's new, they forget a little bit about what's the old and why it was so good. So Davidoff goes through cycles to revitalize the brands that already exist.
Yeah, one of the Davidoffs I actually had recently that I just can't stop thinking about. It was really good. Was I was at Davidoff of Geneva in Las Vegas when we were in town for the trade show, and they had the 110th anniversary blend there, and that one was really, really good. And now I have never had any of the chef's editions, but I'm seeing more and more of the chef's edition popping up. That's next on my radar.
Yep.
But yeah,
I think it comes out in 2 weeks.
yeah, I think it's
The new one.
it's coming soon, and I gotta get my hands on it when it does. But yeah, I mean, you talk about a little bit about, I know Davidoff has done like a lot of special editions or like limited regular productions. I know, like being down in Tampa, for example, I know that there's Davidoff in Tampa, and Jeff at Corona is a Davidoff retailer and does a lot with Davidoff. And he has his own Florida Sun-Grown Davidoff blend. There's the Tampa exclusive. There's so many different exclusives and blends, in the Davidoff world, so to speak. And it's crazy to think, that you can just. It's like an infinite amount of possibilities, really, I guess, when it comes to cigar blending. We have a question here from David Wayne. Will Davidoff use a Corojo blend?
Well, I can't tell you that, but what Davidoff does do is, because Oettinger Davidoff owns a lot of different brands. Mm-hmm. So you have Avo under the Oettinger Davidoff umbrella. You have Camacho. So Corojo will always be front and center for the Camacho brand. Mm-hmm. But you never know. It might one day come out in a limited edition. But the Corojo is a very, very powerful seed with a lot of flavor, very distinct flavor, and we don't want to take that flavor profile from the Camacho line, and we don't want it to be appropriated by another brand that might cannibalize the other brand. So you got to also keep the blends from every line separate. You cannot mix them.
It's actually a very interesting point that you bring up, because and Davidoff's not the only one to do it. There's a lot of companies out there that have different brand names under their umbrella, and you have different lines and different brands, and you try to keep them all distinguished in their own way. And I feel like that also can be a challenge too. When you have multiple brands under that umbrella and you're blending cigars, you're trying to, like for example, Davidoff's a little bit more like A and Camacho's a little bit more like B, and you don't really want to intermingle that too much because you want people to gravitate that towards a brand. And I guess that's where maybe the corporate side comes into it. Like you were talking about before, it's like as a blender, you're like, well, I'm blending cigars and I want it to taste right or whatever, but they might be like, well, we want that blend to be more over here, so let's not do that for this. And you kind of have to play that game with them on that too.
Yeah, because as a blender or from being part of a blending team or being part of people that get input into the blends, when you have something like Yamasa, that you have like a new soil that comes out, or a new variety, or a new flavor profile that becomes available to the market, and it's something new, then you become inspired and you can make a blend around it. There's and you can make really good blends out of it, and the market accepts it, and corporate accepts it. Switzerland says, awesome, you have a new thing. We have a new marketing campaign around this new product, this new tobacco that you were able to create. 702, new tobacco, we're able to create a whole new marketing thing around this. But sometimes it goes the other way around, where it's corporate, or Switzerland saying, we want to hit this demographic, we want this flavor profile. Example, Escurio, we want to use Brazilian tobacco because we think we're missing this in the market. So then they pitch it to the factory, and then the factory has to go and find the tobacco and start making blends for that. So it's almost like a different thinking cap where sometimes it's the factory leading the charge with the blend creation. Sometimes it's the marketing team or the sales team saying, hey, we need this. Can you create this? And then it's up to the factory to be able to satisfy that demand or that need. And it it is harder when marketing says, hey, we want something that has never been done by us, and you have to go out there and find it. But it's also a new adventure and it's a new challenge. And as a blender, you have to put on a different thinking cap, and always respecting the other brands and all the other cigars that you have made so that they don't overlap. You have to make sure they're all at least decently different in flavor profile, because I don't want somebody to move from Davidoff Aniversario to Davidoff Yamasa. I'm just moving the same person inside the company and the same consumer. I want somebody that has never tried Davidoff to come into the Davidoff world and enjoy what Davidoff has to offer. We want to expand our market share.
Now, the last thing I wanted to ask you about before we wrap up here is in terms of tobaccos and whatnot. There's another line that Davidoff makes that is one of my favorites. I love it so much. And that's the late hour, the Winston Churchill late hour, which I think is a fantastic cigar. I've smoked a ton of those over the years since they came out. And that particular cigar is interesting because the wrapper tobacco is aged in Scotch barrels, if I'm not mistaken.
One filler, the Condega.
Oh, the filler. Okay, that's what it is.
Yeah, the Condega filler is aged in a barrel for 6 months.
So I find that concept very interesting. Like, I know the Perdomos, do that. I know a lot of people do that. They age the tobaccos in, Scotch or bourbon barrels. That's a very interesting practice. Now, in what way does that really affect the fermentation process of the tobacco? Is that more something that happens secondary? Is that a primary aging? Or
that happens at the end.
Okay.
That's, you could say, is the last thing that happens before the tobacco goes to the blending department, and then the cigar goes to be made, crafted. So the tobacco has already gone, all the fermentation process has already undergone the traditional normal aging process. And then after it's gone through all of that, then the filler tobacco gets put in barrels. And it's just the barrel and just a little bit of water so that fermentation happens, a little temperature happens. It's almost like another fermentation process that happens inside the barrels. And every month you're taking it out, you're seeing how the tobacco is evolving, you're flipping it, you're basically reducing the temperature so that it doesn't spike too much, so the tobacco doesn't get ruined, and then you put it back. And then at about 5-6 months, the tobacco is pretty much ready. Tobacco has the ability to absorb aromas from anything. That's why, for example, if you're in a humidor, it's good to separate all the normal cigars from the flavored cigars so that the aromas don't mix. That's why most people in the cigar industry don't wear perfume or don't have oils or ointments in their hands, because anything that touches the tobacco can absorb that. And that's why I don't have really candles here or anything that might change the aroma of all my humidors around me, because I'm purist in that sense. That's why I keep the cellophane on the cigars, so that the cigars don't rub up against each other, so that the tobaccos are not absorbing the oils from the cigar next door. And that's why humidors have separators, because tobacco has the ability to absorb. And one last thing, that's why when you go to factories, you don't see precious woods and precious paint that add aroma. It's all non-odor, so that the tobacco doesn't absorb this. So when you ferment the tobacco in these barrels, the tobacco is able to absorb the aromas from the barrel, from what used to be the Scotch or whiskey inside, or the bourbon or whatever you had in that barrel previously, and also the wood. And I've tried tobacco that after 2 months, it's already absorbed a lot of aroma from the barrels. But we do give it up to 6 months just in case, and so that we're sure that it's impregnated with the aroma and the taste. And when you taste Condega 100% by itself, normal aging, normal fermentation, and then you taste another cigar that was aged 100% Condega, but 100% of the cigar was aged in a bourbon barrel, they taste night and day. They're completely different. The one in the bourbon barrel or the Scotch barrel is going to be much more powerful in intensity. It's going to be spicier, also a little sweeter, and it's completely different smoke. So it's like having a completely different variety at your disposal for blending with a little bit more work.
It's interesting. You bring up a lot of good points there, and it's funny. John's not on the show tonight, but a lot of the times he, this is something I thought of right away. He does a soap review segment on the show from time to time that he's very into, and he talks about the aromas and the scents on the hands and all that. So it's funny. Maybe this is more of a lighthearted joke, but are you also insinuating that you use a lot of unscented soaps too, so that way that doesn't influence any cigars that you might be holding? That question's for him because I know he would have asked that question.
My shampoo is very basic. My conditioner is very basic. I don't use anything that really has aromas, and even when it comes to like deodorant and perfume. I don't remember the last time I used perfume. I think maybe for like one party where I knew I wasn't going to be smoking a cigar. I just don't want other aromas interfering. I'm always smoking cigars. So if you give me a perfume bottle, that will last me years. I mean, I'll probably die 50 years from now. I'll still have perfume inside because it's just something I don't use. But I'm a purist. And I don't like any of those or extra aromas that are interfering with my experience.
Yeah, it's something that's another thing that we don't really talk a lot about on the show, and it's a good point to bring up with others too. Just the outside influence of other aromas and things that can affect the cigars.
Well, yeah, I mean, even on a day-to-day use, if your environment is being exposed to different scents, right, it might throw off your taste or your smell. So you're kind of keeping this pure environment, which always allows you to be in tune to your taste of tobacco. I said it before that, like, I have to be objective. And the moment other aromas and other things start interfering, then I'm not being consistent in the way that I enjoy my cigars. You cannot be a taster for quality and all these things if there is a variable that is changing your aromas or your perception. So like when I'm gonna go smoke a cigar for work, which is most of the time, people will tell me, it's like, you don't look like you're having fun. You're not smiling, or you're not enjoying it. And I'm enjoying it, but you'll see my face being very serious, and I'm just concentrating. Even if I'm like enjoying at a bar or something, like I would just get serious for a moment, because every time I take a puff, I'm analyzing. It's not conscious. I just automatically start analyzing the cigar, and being able to maintain that consistency when you're trying cigars every single time is important when your job is to try out cigars and make sure that they're always perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a huge part of it. It's very important. And I can picture you now just being in an element and smoking, and people being like, "Wow, he's so serious," and it's like, "Nah, I'm just thinking about the smoke, thinking about the flavor."
I don't. I mean, I don't like routines. I like being very free when I do certain things. But there's certain routines that I keep, and it's like, for example, if I'm going to enjoy a cigar for work, like I need to have brush my teeth. If I ate something, I need to brush my teeth like 30 minutes before. Drink water. Make sure I'm on a full stomach. And I need that all the environment has to be like perfect, so that when I'm going to rate this cigar for work, I need to make sure that everything is as perfect as can be, so that the only variable is the cigar.
So would you call yourself a perfectionist?
When it comes to this, yes.
Yeah.
When it comes to this, yes.
Well, Klaas, it's been a great time. We've had a great conversation, and you've given so much information and educated so much. We really appreciate you being on here with us tonight. as we end and wrap up the show, we want to thank you again for being here. We appreciate you taking the time, and we hope you come back in the future. There's always opportunity for people to come back. But with that, next week, I'm sorry. First, we have Saturday. Saturday, we have another episode of the Spare Notes series with myself and William Cooper, where I don't want to give away the sometimes I tease the topics, but I don't think I'm going to. Just tune in Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, and we'll talk about it. Next week, we have Travis Lord, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about marketing and a lot of the other things that he does in the cigar industry. It'll be very interesting. Followed by Abe Flores from PDR. And then the end of the month, we are going to round out with Scott Pierce from the PCA, which would be a very interesting show. And
then we do have a special guest on the 25th.
We do. I was getting to that.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Ruined it.
We'll be doing a special episode on the 25th, and that will be 3 p.m. Eastern on our Facebook and YouTube platforms. And as always, all of our episodes will be available anywhere podcasts can be found if you're listening at home. Wherever you find your podcast, all of these episodes are in the same spot, including the Spare Note series. I have to clarify that because I got a couple questions on that. All the episodes are under the Smokin Tabacco umbrella. And on the 25th, we will have Jeremiah Mirafel, who will be on, and we're going to talk about all the things that he and his family has done, including Cameroon tobacco. So that'll be a very interesting episode as well. Yep. So stay tuned for that one. Other than that, I think that's all we got going on so far. Klaas, you are the guest. Thank you for being on. Anything that you want to say or anything you want to promote while you're here, absolutely, the floor is yours.
No, yeah, thank you for having me on. Again, just kind of like how I started, I was very excited to be here when I saw you guys in Vegas, because of course you guys got engaged in Vegas, and that's one thing that we do have in common, where I got married in Vegas, and I don't know, I think you guys are going to try to get married in Vegas. Is that correct?
We are, yeah. Yep.
And I got married in Vegas because IPCPR at the time has kind of been like part of my life and my family, and every single time we've gone, and every single year we've gone to support and the industry in one way or another. And you have no idea how happy I was to see that somebody got engaged there. Now they want to get married there, and we have that thing in common. And your last name is Tobacco, which is even more awesome. So you guys are doing a great job, and I support this kind of environment, this kind of podcast. So if you guys ever need anything from me, please reach out to me. I would love to come back, and I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for the kind words. It was definitely a special moment. Getting engaged out there. That was the place. It wasn't just because of the trade show, but that definitely I knew made it more special. That was the place that I wanted to do it. But yeah,
and it's fitting.
Yeah, it was fitting,
it's
but
fitting
also being able
us.
to share that experience, with everyone who was at the show too. Like that was so awesome. So many people that we all know and talk to, but it's very rare that everyone, or mostly everyone, is together under one roof, as an industry. So it was really cool to share that with everyone. And we're looking at a Vegas wedding as well. So maybe I'll hit you up for some recommendations or some tips. Anything, any information on that front you want to share, we can talk privately about that. I can text you about that.
Just have a blast. It's Vegas.
Yeah.
I share that feeling. Just being able to share that kind of very special moment, intimate moment with the rest of the industry. It is what the industry is about. So you guys get it, and that's what makes me happy to be here.
Absolutely.
You guys love it.
Yeah, we do. We love it so much. Well, stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We'll talk to you after the show. But guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening at home, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Bye.